Getting to the point where we need to make some decisions, I will let Councillor Ainslie just sum up for a couple of minutes, please, Councillor Ainslie, on the 3 points.
Just waiting for more use being before what? For making the conservation area. Yes, sorry, one point that Joanne missed was that this Mr. Black, Chief Planning Officer, is waiting for more information before consideration is made on the decision. Okay, look, I don't know where to begin. I guess the reason that there's going to be a judicial review is, as is said, is because the whole idea that refurbishment is not an option is people aren't buying it, and there's going to be a decision that's going to come back and haunt the council and continue to haunt them. Save British Heritage will provide detail to look into how refurbishment could be an option. Residents have secured 20,000 of funding to research some green alternatives for further developing grants and stuff that's available during the EU, from the EU. Multimillions have already been identified from EU, and the study continues. So the idea that the whole judicial review thing is done and dead in the water, I think these are things that we have to consider. And also on affordability, I've got some details here which I'll have to provide at a later date because I'm on to looking into this SPV now. But where is it? The homes in disrepair, how many with damp, how many, according to the Tall Structural Survey, they estimated 70% have damp due to poorly fitted windows and leaking roofs. Refurbishment costs estimate in March Cabinet report. The following costs would be approximately £45,000 for the window repairs. New roofs for all the homes, end of life, i.e. 40 years old, would be 2.4 million. This is approximately 8,000 per home. Leaseholders would be expected to pay the proportionate percentage share, roughly 30% of homes. So the final cost of land would only be 1.7 million. The biggest cost in the refurb costs is probably the internal works for the council tenants, for example, kitchens and bathrooms. However, they're assuming that 90% of council tenants need 100% of works. They have never been able to prove that 90% assumption, despite chasing them for over 7 months now. The original estimate was only 37% of council tenant homes were non-decent, i.e. needing new kitchens, etc. If the need for a new roof meant every time that demolition should be opted for, then the Lambeth Town Hall should be demolished because it is getting a new roof. I've got other points on overcrowding, but also, in terms of affordability, strange, isn't it, that the council managed to find an ongoing amount of money to repair one of the estates at the top of Brixton Hill, yet it struggles to help out and bail out continued net contributor to the housing revenue account of about £1 million every year. When does the Cressingham Gardens residents get to see some payback for that? They have only ever been used up £200,000 of their repair budget on an annual basis. I reckon that, and they pay in 1.2 million, so that is a net contribution to the housing revenue account of £1 million per annum in perpetuity that is being lost. So I would challenge the affordability issue. But listen, the main reason that we've come here tonight is that we have 2 ears and we have 1 mouth, and I think we should use them in proportion, especially when we're dealing with people that are going to be electing us. And I don't think that some of the residents' concerns, or indeed Councillor Jackie Dyer's concerns, have actually been heard. How can councillors make a decision based on no financial information? How does option 5 go from negative net present value now to, for a few months ago, to a positive 13 million? That question has not been addressed. The other point I wanted to say is
4 minutes now, Councillor Ainslie, if you could wrap up, please.
Looking into this caught this idea of the special purpose vehicle. It sounds like financial skullduggery that got America into the state and therefore the rest of the world into the state that it's in. It sounds like it's gift wrapping and Lambeth are going into property speculation. I've pulled up Enfield's report because I am guaranteed, if I was to ask, if we had time to ask every single cabinet member who's making a decision on this, scrutiny member tonight who's making a decision on this, what an SPV is, I don't think any of you would be able to tell me what it is.
Apart from me on that point, really, come find me afterwards, I'll talk you through it.
Okay, so let me just say that it serves as a mechanism that enables the council to intervene in the market to deliver new homes. It returns significant net cash flows to the general fund and it reduces risk to the council in two ways. Firstly, it allows the council to obtain lower rates of public funding and make a profit on lending at a higher commercial rate to the SPV, so avoid any state aid issues. Secondly, and more importantly, it avoids the risk of any private tenants acquiring a secure tenancy or the right to buy the property. Make of that what you will, but I'm a bit concerned that it says it's a risk of acquiring a secure tenancy. So these new tenancy agreements under this SPV, they're certainly not the secure tenancies that the council tenants on Cressingham enjoy now.
Councillor Bennett or the officers very briefly want to sum up their position and then we'll go to the committee for their views on the decision. Councillor Bennett.
Sorry, Scott. Thank you. I will just on the Enfield issue. I mean, it doesn't necessarily sound that bad, but as I said, to answer Councillor Wilcox's question, there are very different ways to do it, and we are looking specifically at promoting the delivery of social housing to meet the needs of the borough. That's that issue. I just want to come back because there was a lot of discussion around the refurbishment costs that Councillor Ainslie raised, and he was talking about window costs. I want to be clear that specifically at the request of residents, the costs for replacing windows were removed from the council's calculations at the March decision, and they were not featured within that cabinet report in that £9.4 million. And £20,000 is not an insignificant sum, but it does leave £9.38 million left to find. When, as I've already said, we are up against the HRA borrowing cap, cannot borrow anymore, and the changes to housing finance that are being introduced by the government will reduce further the amount of money that we have available to spend on refurbishment. Refurbishment is not, and this is the reason it was ruled out, a viable option. The judicial review is not a dead issue, it's a live issue, it's going to court in November, but that issue is around whether or not the council withdrew refurbishment issues, withdrew refurbishment as a possible option in haste. And I would say, and the council will be saying, that that's not true because if there's no money, then there's no money. And there were some points around how the HRA works, which is not how the HRA works, but we could be here all night if we went into the details of housing finance, so I won't go into it. And to sum up, the decision that Cabinet made at July was the only way that it was possible to make sure that tenants get a decent home. It is the only way that we can start to significantly build homes in this borough to meet the levels of need that we referred to at the beginning, and which we haven't necessarily gone back to and covered throughout the very detailed and important discussion we've had, but it's the point that I keep coming back to, which is that with the levels of need we have in this borough, with the huge numbers of people on the waiting list and in temporary accommodation, we have to build, and rebuilding Cressingham is one of the ways we can do that, and I hope the committee will endorse the decision that Cabinet made this evening.
Thank you very much. So,